Hey, thank you all so much for joining another episode of Celeste the Therapist podcast. My name is Celeste, a therapist from Boston. If you are new to this podcast, thank you for being here. Today we have a regular guest. If you are new, you don't know that, but if you've been rocking with me for a while, I'm going to have him introduce himself to you all.
Hi, I'm Jermaine Morris. I'm a certified coaching consultant with a practice based around a DISC assessment, which is basically a test that shows how we behave when it comes to dealing with problems, how we make decisions, interacting with people, the best and most and least effective communication styles, potential blind spots in our behavior, all these sorts of things, like how we are naturally when everything's okay, and then even how we become when we're under stress or under pressure. And so along with the assessment, then there's also coaching programs that go with addressing specific challenges that get highlighted in the assessment.
Nice. I was actually looking at and I did a DISC assessment and when we went over it on an episode. And I was looking at it the other day. And it said, so how Jermaine said how you are naturally and under stress. One of my highlights was being able to listen and solve problems. Like naturally, I was a 99. And I under pressure it just dropped a little bit, but I just was like, wow, like I'm really in the right field. And I always a lot of my clients have taken it, and the ones that take it out, we always refer back to it at times. I find it to be a really good tool for people that may not really be able to articulate themselves, as far as like who they are, or like they may know they don't like something but not understand what they like or struggling. And I have found that to be really helpful. Is that like an area that a lot of people have said that it has helped them in as far as like their work environment?
Uh, yeah. Well, first off, thank you for all the people that you
Mhm.
refer to it for. And yeah, it's a good. I would say that they always say that human beings don't come with an owner's manual. Well, this kind of becomes ours because the
Right.
assessment comes with a 22-page report about us. And so I was premised to, I'm not a doctor, so I don't diagnose or I don't prescribe. So when we talk about the stuff that's in the assessment, it's not coming from a place of you suffer from this or you have, this syndrome, whatever. We just look at the what and the how an individual behaves. And my premise is always self-awareness without judgment. So we're just looking at how we interact and how we do things. And when it comes to, and in the report is also your ideal environment. So, like for you, how you found the ideal environment with who you are. So you do what's in alignment with who and how you are. And so for some people, we can find where they're having challenges because the environment that they're in is not conducive to the person that they are. So if you're somebody who's wired to be social and interactive and communicative and always wanting to work with people and help, but you've got a job with your, 2 floors down in a cubicle in the basement by yourself, that's an environment that fundamentally goes against who and how you are. So that no wonder you're depressed about work or you have anxiety about going. So these things get highlighted not only professionally, but we can see examples within their family dynamic, within relationships and in community. Like what are your strengths, which we highlight in the assessment, as well as the environment that you're in, and then maybe some of those potential blind spots and things that we're missing, that there's a disconnect, all that stuff. And it helps in the job and relationships and family and basically just life.
Yeah, and another part I liked is like how to best communicate with
Yeah.
you and how you communicate best. And as a therapist and talking to people, I would say things, but it was something different where people are able to like see it, and it's like, oh yeah, we've talked about that. So the test is a really good tool. Like I highly recommend it, and Jermaine has a website as well.
Yeah.
For people that's not watching me on YouTube or Facebook, and you're listening, what's the website?
It's mykeystome.com. So MYKEYSTOME, mykeystome.com. And when you go to the website, it gives you information on the assessment and the coaching, as well as it allows you to set up a free 15-minute consultation to go in detail and answer any questions you have and get you started.
Nice. Today, we're gonna talk about acceptance. Speaking of like who you are and stuff, I guess it's a nice segue into thinking about acceptance and just kind of talking around that. Tell me a little bit about what you've been seeing in your line of work around this area, this word acceptance.
Yeah. So acceptance is it's hard first, and so and what I mean by acceptance is it's not the same as settling. So it's not necessarily settling for your situation, but it's actually accepting where you're currently standing, accepting your current financial situation, accepting your current friendship circle, relationship dynamics, romantically or within family, where you are in your career. Like, it doesn't mean that this is the last stop. It doesn't mean that you can't do different. But when we just try to gloss over where we are, because maybe we're trying to get somewhere else, or we don't like our situation, so we want it to be different, it's very difficult to do those things if we don't acknowledge where our current footing is. And in that acceptance is, like I said, it's still, we're still open to change. We can still do different things, but it's simply saying, okay, look, this is where I'm at right now. This is how I'm currently behaving. These are the relationships I'm in. This is what my current relationship looks like. So let me get this. I need to get some bearing on my current footing and not be so concerned about where I was or where I'm going, but I need to at least get a good base point of where I'm at right now.
You said, people gloss over it, and one of the things I want to share my screen for people that are listening. I'm just gonna pull up a feelings chart because I want people to like see, because there's something about being able to see these things and name them that can be helpful. So we have this emotion wheel, and I feel like a lot of times we know happy and we know sad, we know like some of the main ones, but sometimes there's a lot of other deeper emotions that are coming up for people, which is why they want to gloss over it because it feels very uncomfortable. And it's like emotions are one of those things where I feel like we should learn in grade school the way we know about our alphabets and our numbers, because I don't care how smart you are. A lot of people have found themselves feeling very stuck, struggling with acceptance because uh, of these complicated emotions that happen because it's part of the human experience. What is your thoughts about this?
Yeah. So first off, I love the wheel, and I'm a firm believer in words and language. So I think that the more that we can articulate what we're feeling and see using something like this, where it shows detail, where it's not just fearful, but also so scared, anxious, insecure, weak, all those different versions. That's great,
Mhm.
and I think that teaching emotional intelligence and emotional awareness at a younger age is definitely something I think we're lacking in a lot of in a lot of our systems now. And yeah, trying to gloss over where you're currently at because it's not a good feeling, it's not beneficial. Like it's being able to identify, okay, this is what's happening with me, and this is where it comes from, and this is what I can do about it, and then this is how I can do something else. But that's got to be accepting my current situation, accepting the series of events that led to my current situation, and then accepting responsibility along with gratitude that I can better my situation. But all that is rooted in the fact that I have to be honest and true with myself about what it is that's happening with me and where it is what state I'm currently in.
And I feel like we have so many filters and so much the way we live life, we're so used to masking a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I'm in a position to talk to people every day,
Yeah.
and I know that we're all struggling with the same things, and I would say it's not about sharing it with the world, but like really being honest with yourself, because you're with yourself 24/7.
Yeah.
And I always say the audacity of us to pretend like things aren't happening, that's happening. It's like, we're the ones suffering for doing that to we do it to ourselves.
Yeah.
And obviously it's not that like, it's not that we a lot of times it's because we just wasn't taught, and a lot of times we were actually taught to mask, not explicitly, but we in our environment we watched our parents and our parents, and a lot of that is because they've been surviving life.
Yeah.
And they had to mask, like, what are what are the options, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think there's a fundamental I'll call it a flaw with some of the ways that we raise up and kind of how we deal with stuff, and it's where we prioritize protection over preparation, when in reality it's more beneficial to focus on preparation instead of protection. So we try to create bubbles around our kids about, let me create the safest environment for you possible, that you won't get hurt, that you won't get harmed, that you won't. And in reality, they're going to get hurt. They're going to get harmed. They're going to deal with stuff. So it would be better to prepare them for what happens so they can identify something before it happens. They can deal with it in the moment, and then they have the tools to reconcile it after it's happened. So a lot of us, though, exist in a state of protection. We try to build up walls, and we try to guard ourselves, and we try to do all these things to mask and to manipulate, to not actually process what we're doing. So we're not prepared. We're leaning on protection, and that's just not a successful path to take.
Since you brought it up, I just want to say something about the idea of as parents, and then we built this wall. And it's so important. Like what Jermaine is saying is like passionate for me to share with people, because I see it often with adults who really don't know how to deal with the things that are happening in life. And as a parent, I know how hard it is to, to have your kids like feel pain or be sad or feel anxious. I recently lost a friend, and I was, obviously sad about it. And uh, uh, I was like, uh, I'm not gonna say nothing to the kids, but then I'm like, they're gonna see me like looking different, and I'm like, and I told them, because I'm like, oh, they don't like I don't want to like um put this on them, but I wasn't putting anything on them, but I'm just letting them know, because life happens. And if our kids don't know life happens, when they turn 18 and when they start dealing with life, they don't really have, that's the way that we show them things that are going on. That's actually helping build the protection and the strength and the emotional awareness and the intelligence. And we do a disservice when we just like put this guard around them, or we try to fight all of their battles. And I know it's a balance, and especially if you come from an extreme where nobody protected you at all, and you're
Exactly.
like, I'm going to put my whole arms around them. They have to get older. And so I know it's a hard thing to do, but because you brought it up, that's like a passion. That's really, I'm passionate about sharing that with parents, because I just see too many adults that don't really understand the fundamentals of life.
Yeah, and I would even say, I don't know if to say they don't understand. No one wants to see their baby crying. And even if your baby's 25, like no one wants to see their baby, hurt. And like I said, the flaw in the plan is, well, let me just protect them from everything that's going on in the world, and that's just not possible. And that pain is inevitable, and but the more that we're prepared, that's what helps with the acceptance. So if something happens to me, I can accept that that's a part of life, because I've been prepared to how to deal with it when it happens. Like some of the results that happen where people get, if somebody betrays you, somebody lies to you, cheats on you, does something, if you're not prepared, then the result of protection is to never trust anybody again. To never, because you're trying to find new ways to create defenses to protect this thing from happening again, as opposed to accepting that this is going to happen. Like people are going to lie to me. People are going to try as human beings who are trying to, maximize pleasure and minimize pain. They're trying to find the best avenue for their own benefit. And there will be people who will sacrifice me for that to happen. But if I'm prepared and I accept that that's real, and I prepare myself to take, trusting is courageous. Like to sit there and say that I understand that these bad things can happen, but I'm willing to put myself in that position again because I've prepared myself. If it goes bad, then I can continue to trust. If I've prepared myself to love myself and appreciate myself, that I don't put all my self-worth in my romantic partner, then I can love again, even if my heart was broken before, because I have a foundation. I've prepared myself how to live, how to deal, and how to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
But when we just try to protect and act like things aren't there, that's when life hits you with that right hook, you're not prepared. So I think accepting the fact of how life is and accepting the fact that a lot of us were not properly prepared for how life is, and just having that real conversation and then fixing it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but we have to accept the fact that it's not that the whole world is bad or there's no one that's trustworthy or there's no one. When we say those things, we just have to accept that, okay, I'm operating from a space of protection and that's not helping me. And so the defense is always going to get exploited because you can't plug all the holes.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
let me focus on preparing myself and accepting what's real in the world and accepting how I go about things. And then I can get in a better position to move forward.
What are the alternatives to accept? If we don't accept, I'm wondering, like, I think about if I go to the doctor and the doctor gives me a diagnosis and I don't want to accept it, and medically, if I don't take care of it, it spreads or it affects other areas of my body. What do you think what happens to people when they don't accept what is?
So if you don't accept something, then it's an internal conflict. There's something that you see this thing, this entity, this situation as an adversary it's the bully you're trying to avoid. And so a conflict avoided is a conflict magnified. So
Oh yeah, that's so true.
yeah.
Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, so a conflict avoided is a conflict magnified. So if you want to act like this thing isn't there, the things that you put around your life to avoid it is actually feeding it.
Mm-hmm.
Because the things that you're doing, the energy that you're giving, the thoughts that you're having are all about this thing, but you're not dealing with this thing. Kind of like if there's a dog in the front yard that you're worried about biting you. So you keep throwing food to the other side of the yard to avoid it. So you can walk past it without having to deal with it. Yeah, but you're feeding it every day.
Right.
So it's getting bigger and stronger and healthy because you're feeding it every day to avoid it. So at some point, you're going to run out of snacks, or this dog is going to be big enough, strong enough, and fast enough to catch you. So not accepting it's a temporary, not going to call it a fix, but a temporary situation.
I think an example a lot of people can relate to, like you talked about, if you let's say you had a bad breakup, and the feelings, all these emotions are going, but you don't know how to really deal with them, so you go into a new relationship, and then you get into that new relationship with a lot of the baggage from the previous one because it was hard to accept that breakup.
Yeah,
I think that's a kind of an example a lot of people like have had and don't realize it. It's like a distraction. I put that in quotation marks because even though if it's not consciously on your mind, you'll be surprised. There's a lot of areas in your life, so many different ways that not accepting can affect you with your goals, with your physical health. Like it's just so many areas when you're not dealing with things. And I feel like internally, like we break down because we're not supposed to stay like in a stressful state and all the time the way we do.
Yeah, not at all. And for people, so using the relationship example, so if the quote unquote dog in the front yard is your fear of being hurt again, that you're trying to just shift into the new relationship. So where you got cheated on, lied to, betrayed in some form or fashion in the first relationship, you're now checking phones in the second one. You're now double downing on where are they at? Who are these friends around them? You're now more concerned about their interactions with other people. That's the dog you're feeding. So the dog didn't exist before in the previous relationship. And you feel like, oh, well, because Okay, so now I'm going to protect myself. Now I'm going to start putting all these things in place. And you can
Mm-hmm.
find yourself just spiraling, worrying about what this new mate is doing
Mm-hmm.
and pressuring them about stuff and questioning them about stuff that has nothing to do with them, but it has to do with all this past stuff that was never
Yeah.
accepted or dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
And so that internal conflict with whatever that fear is, whatever that hurt is, we have to accept and address it.
Yeah. Another big one I've seen too. I've had clients who have started with me who come in and of anger management, or there's people say they're so angry. Man, when we start working together, I'm like, oh my God, they're the nicest people that I've met. And just kind of going into their history, learning that the anger became a protection because they've been like screwed over so much that they portray this image,
Yes.
and have this persona because I'm gonna hurt you before you hurt me, and that's because the first hurt doesn't get addressed, and then your system. That's how powerful our mind is. It's like it goes into like, uh-oh, what's Jermaine gonna do? And then so I'm attacking you, so because I'm afraid you're gonna any little thing that because you don't deal with the trauma or the pain or whatever's happened,
Exactly.
your mind starts to build this protection, and a lot of us aren't in tune with our mind, and so that thing becomes magnified, like you said, because we're ignoring it. I say that in quotation marks. We can't really ignore what is, but we try to in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And living in America, all we do is hustle and bustle and work, and not pausing. We don't have these pausing moments.
I mean, not acknowledging these things. So with that example of the person with the anger, kind of goes that old phrase, the song, it's a thin line between love and hate. So the people that we think are the meek, quiet, pushovers, super sensitive, cry all the time people, and the ones that are quick to fight, who always seem angry, who are super defensive, those two are actually very, very, very similar. They're not opposite ends of the spectrum. They're side by side. Like, it's just their reaction to the situation is different, but the
Yeah.
motivation and the mentality is the same. One is, I'm just going to fall back and try to stay out of the way. The other one is, I'm going to be the aggressor and try to hope that I can either avoid this or beat you to the punch. But it's operating from the same space. When you get the opposite side of that spectrum, like I said, the opposite, same premise of the opposite of love isn't hate. The opposite of love is indifference. So when you don't care one way or the other about the individual, that's the opposite of love. And on the opposite side of that protection is preparation. So you're not operating from a space of fear, whether to fall back or to be the aggressor, because you're prepared. So you just operate in the world and you deal with stuff as it comes. That makes sense?
Right. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And I've seen a lot of kids, when I worked in a hospital, I would tell parents a lot of the things that they're going through, they don't really have language for it, which is why I think emotions should be everywhere, posted somewhere. But a lot of times they tend to act out, if there's changes in school or the behaviors, there's something that's going on that they can't articulate. As adults, a lot of times we're not articulating what we're dealing with, so imagine the kids and everything that they're going through, and so like a lot of this stuff starts at a young age, and then we become older adults doing it, not as well, there are some childlike responses that still happen as adults. But it intensifies, and that's a hard way to live when you feel like everything's happening to you and you don't have control over it. And I think that happens a lot when the acceptance doesn't take place.
Yeah. And especially so if you're starting with somebody who's young and they have these things that happen, like I said, if you're in that space where you're not getting prepared, the default is protection. What are the things that I can do to make sure this does not happen again?
Mm-hmm.
And so we become adults with these same coping mechanisms
Mm-hmm.
of conflict avoidance, or how we deal with stuff or don't deal with things, how we act like that stuff isn't there. Or you hear people say, I don't like confrontation, and so they try to avoid the stuff that's going on, or they all these different things. So but just simply saying, so the acceptance of just maybe like, I never learned conflict resolution. Like some of us grew up in households where people fought and then they broke up,
Mm-hmm.
and then they never talked. You never heard their names again. So as kids, we never grew up and saw, like, there's parents who are like, you never fight in front of the kids. Well, kids are aware of when you're arguing at times. They're much more intuitive than we might think.
Yes.
So it's not about avoiding them seeing you fight, but it's about letting them see you come back together, about letting them see, like, okay, we discussed this, but then we talked it out and we worked it out and we understand each other and we're okay. Those are tools for preparation. But when kids grow up and never see anybody resolve a conflict, it's just like, okay, well, you argue, you fight, you say hurtful things, and then once somebody disappears, when they grow up, that's the way they either behave, or they go into a default. When they see an argument coming, they think, oh, this person's going to leave now if we get into this confrontation. So I'm going to act like this isn't a problem because I don't want them to go away. And so their protection mode is quiet resentment and indirect passive aggressive stuff. Because if I argue with them, they're going to say something hurtful to me and then they're going to disappear. And I don't want them to disappear. I just want to fix this problem. And so these are things that if we don't learn these things, if we have not learned them coming up, accept the fact that we didn't learn them. That's fine. But if I don't know it at 32, I'm accepting I didn't learn it till 32. But at 32, I'm going to start preparing myself.
Yeah, acceptance without judgment too, right? Because it's like you only know what you know, and the worst thing you could do is just beat yourself up for not knowing. But I feel like, after, let's say we accept, right? I think another hard thing that people struggle with is what needs to happen. Because sometimes let's say you accept your financial state, or you accept your relationship state at work or in your home. And changes have to happen, right? Because it sounds all beautiful, we accept, but when change starts, I think that's where people, like, they know what they need to do, but struggle with making that next move.
Yeah. So in the acceptance part of it, so say financially, so in the acceptance part is, I keep feeling like there's more month than the end of my money. Like, I keep feeling like these bills keep it. So accept the fact, number one, do I make enough money? Like, so let's start with like just actual acceptance. Does my net income surpass, like, is it greater than what my overhead?
Which means you have to sit down and actually do inventory.
Yeah, you actually have to sit there and take stock. Okay, how much money do I actually take in? And then how much money has to go out? Not what I feel like, not what I want to do, but what's my overhead? What's my bottom line overhead? And then you may have to accept the fact that I don't make enough in my current situation.
Yeah.
It may be I do make enough, but I have a tendency to spend it on things. So I keep coming up short. Okay, then I have to accept the fact that my spending habits are the problem. It's not my income. It's my spending habits. Because if I don't address my spending habits, if I made $20,000 a year more, I'm going to be in the same boat. Those are those people who, regardless, after a certain tax bracket, their situation is still the same. They're still check to check. If they're making $60,000 a year, $70,000 a year, $80,000 a year, $90,000, you're like, how do you gross $120,000 a year and you're still check to check? But you were figuring out a way to live when you were making $30,000 a year. Yeah, because your spending habit is the same. It just went up. Those habits changed as your tax bracket changed. So it's accepting, okay, I have an issue with my spending. Okay, so then rectifying, having that real world conversation with myself is, okay, I can't get there while doing this. My impulse buying is what's keeping me check to check. So putting some structure and some disciplining myself. If the issue is I don't make enough, okay, then I have to get out of whatever my current comfort zone is. I may not be able to sleep as many hours a night as I am accustomed to.
Right.
Because I may have to get a side job or work some extra hours. I'm going to have to do something different to change this situation.
Yeah.
So, but just, but all that starts with is I'm just accepting the situation for what it is. If my relationship dynamic is not working for me, we argue, or we kind of a sidebar. Love to do that. I was listening to this gentleman, and he was talking around the difference of fight languages. And so there's the great book out there. It's I can't place the author, forgive me, addressing love languages.
Okay.
Like whether it be words of affirmation, gifts, that sort of stuff. But human beings also have a fight language. And so what we do in confrontation. So what kind of taking back to the assessment, like our natural versus our adaptive. What's the shift? And so if you're adaptive. So say if you're naturally communicative and you talk, but when you're adaptive, when you get angry, when you get upset,
It's shut down.
it's to withdraw and to reflect and to think. Well, that's part of your fight language. So when you're getting in this intense argument or something is starting to get heated, your default is to fall back, not communicate, and to process. But if the person that you're across from, their default is to engage and to want to find a right now solution, and we need to talk about this right this second. Well, that's the language that you operate in while you're fighting. And to be able to understand which one that is, and that they're not pushy because they're trying to push, and they're not rejecting me because they want to fall back. But this is the language, the default I go into in these spaces. And if somebody is reflective and they want to work it out, if you press them and push them, they're either going to withdraw even more or give you an answer that they haven't fully worked through.
Yeah.
And then that's usually when you hear something that you can't take back.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have a chance to work this whole thing through before they answered you.
Yeah.
And so, but all of that stuff is accepting, figuring out who we are, and understanding who we are, accepting who we are, and then being able to work within who we are. That's where having language to these things becomes so important.
Yeah, I love that example about like the shutting down, because that happens a lot in relationships. I have people say, but they're not talking. I said, well, maybe give them time to, maybe they need time to reflect, and they don't know how to say something because they're put on the spot. I'm very communicative, and I talk, and my husband's very more reflective, internal. And so when I'm like, and initially I would struggle, like, hey, blah, blah, blah. And he's not saying nothing back. And I would get so mad. And then I learned, like, he's thinking, like, relax. And a lot of people don't know that, I mean, obviously I knew this before the DISC assessment, but it actually, because we both did it, it actually showed literally what we already knew. But knowing who you are in those moments where, for me, it could feel like, oh my gosh, you are not listening, you don't care. That's a big one. People talk, you don't care. But it's like, no, like that. And that allows me to reflect and be okay with the silence, right? A lot of times we're just not taught. We were talking earlier before the show. A lot of it is just a lack of taught how to deal with things that are coming up.
Yeah. And so when you get the language to and accept and know yourself, if you're somebody who's the reflective side, then you have the language to articulate to your partner, like to say, I'm not ignoring you and I'm not disregarding this conversation, but I need an hour. I need 30 minutes. I need something so I can get my thoughts together. Because right now it's like the Soul Train scramble board. It's just a bunch of letters all over the place. I need to put this in line for this to make sense to me so I can read this answer back to you. You're asking me to just pull some random letters out and give you an answer. And I don't fully understand what I'm looking at yet. So I just need a little time. Let me work this through. And then I'll give you my undivided attention and we can talk this all the way out. But that happens when you accept the way you are. And then articulate that to the other person. To the same regard, the inverse of that, if you're the right now person, that to be able to say that I feel like conflicts and situations need to be resolved as soon as possible. And I've got a full head of steam and all these thoughts. And if I don't get them out now, I may not remember them, or it may not be this, and this. So that's why I'm really trying to focus on this right now. But I understand that may not be you. So tools for them is like, okay, I'm going to write this down. So if you're not in a position to have this conversation with me for 30 minutes or an hour, then if you're the communicative one, then writing down what you're feeling in the moment, whether by journaling or just by maybe in the form of a letter or however, write out your emotions right now, because you need to get this out right now. And then when they're ready to talk in an hour, you can present to them what you wrote. They can process what they process what you did. And then you've taken some of the pressure off of your lid because you got it out in writing. They've had time to process what they're going through. And then when you come back to meet, you're at a place to where you're both able to hear and understand one another.
Do you think, when we talk about acceptance, do you think people, they want to change, they just don't know how to do it? I think because they don't realize maybe acceptance is the missing piece to the things that they're trying to figure out.
Those people say, this is who I am. I am,
Mm-hmm.
I am, this is me, love me or leave me. Like, this is
Mm-hmm.
like what they believe. This get with the program. Like, there's some people
Mm-hmm.
who are like, this is where the self-awareness is left to chat. Like, they'll sit there and they'll see the way that they see it and they think that's it. And they're just double down on that. Some people may not be aware. Like,
Yeah.
some of us are operating. That's the thing about those safeties, about those protections, about those coping mechanisms,
Mm-hmm.
that after a while, it's almost like if you have a personal security team around you, they learn your traits and behaviors. So they know which way you go. They know where you're going to go before you go. And it's almost like those old movies or cartridges. I remember the Secret Service people used to always take out the threats, and the president would never even see them.
Oh,
Like,
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
the security team would be walking with somebody, and they caught the person in the bushes, or they got the person who was doing this, and the person they were protecting never even knew that these threats existed. Our coping mechanisms and our defenses aligned with protection start doing things around us that we don't even become consciously aware of.
Right.
So as we're moving through the world, we're doing things that don't even register in our conscious mind. And so the awareness isn't there that, like, I am cutting people off, or I am doing this to folks, or I am, it's not that there's the lack of acceptance there. That's where there's the lack of awareness.
Yeah, that's good. I want to give people like some like steps to, because we're talking about this, and I really want people to take away something that, because I'm
Yeah.
all about the now, like what can I
Yeah.
do about it now? One is the disc assessment that Jermaine talked about. Another way too is taking daily inventory, and I'll let Jermaine share what he feels, but I feel like taking inventory of your day, the feelings, you can Google feelings wheel, and and it comes up and you can print. I've had clients say, I'm printing this out, it's in their phone, it's somewhere where they can see it, which is really amazing. Even the disc, I have clients who have their disc, some of those pages on their wall, so they can check in with themselves, because sometimes, as we're learning, we could forget, like,
Yeah.
it's because it's new for us. But taking inventory of what didn't feel good, and what was your day like, and what are you struggling with, like every day, just because we're constantly engaging with people and things, and we don't even recognize like how we're struggling, because we're just so used to struggling, we adjust to the struggle. And I feel like, if what you're doing isn't working, then one of my sayings is like, why not try something different? Um, and believe me, trying something different is hard. Every step that I take to do different things in this branding and stuff it's not like flawless. When I go speak, I have butterflies. Like, there's just so much that I do where I feel it. And what Jermaine said, a thing ignored is magnified. So I've like learned to accept that fear is like the feelings of anxiousness that I feel are a part of what happens when I'm venturing on new things. I tell myself that. And I lean into it. I don't run away, because if I run away from it, then it wouldn't be no Celeste the Therapist podcast, believe me. So I lean into it and I say, you know what, this is a part of the process as I'm trying to level up. And I think that's important to do, is to lean into it, because you're experiencing it, whether you want to state it out loud or not, you're experiencing it. So
Oh, no, thank you for that. And I completely agree. There's daily stuff to do, setting your intention for the day, and then seeing if you stuck to it by the end of the day.
mm-hmm.
So that's an easy A to B kind of way to kind of gauge. There was a couple years ago, I knew, older couple, and the husband was talking about how he got along with his wife. And he said every day he asks her for a weather report, like at the start of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And the weather report was, how is she doing?
Mm-hmm.
Not if she can put her finger on, this is specifically what's going on with me. But she would just be like, how's the weather today? And she's like, you know what? I just feel, I don't quite feel like myself today. I feel a little down or something, whatever. And he knew that to be, those are the days he would go and get muffins or bring back donuts or to bring her coffee or
Aw.
breakfast or something. Then other days she'd be like, oh, I'm feeling pretty good. I'm feeling pretty excited about stuff. And then those would be the days he may planned, maybe more things that have to do with being more social or being out. But just starting off with, what's your weather report? Like, you don't have to necessarily identify it, but can you at least identify the weather? Can you identify what type of, what kind of mood am I in? And the more we get into practice of doing it, the clearer we can start to identify what those things are. So we may not be able to start and pinpoint, I'm feeling melancholy because of this at the job, because of this specific. It may not be that detailed to begin with, but just starting with, I woke up today and I'm feeling a little sluggish than normal. Did I sleep right? Like, checks and balances. Just start, did I sleep right? Did I drink last night? Did I eat heavy before I went to bed? Is there something going on? Just having, sometimes those personal conversations. And I always recommend, when we're trying to be aware, is journaling, because journaling is a great way to show patterns of behavior. And so if we start, kind of journaling what that morning feeling is, and then journaling the conclusion to the day, it helps give us language, clarity, and then we can look back and see trends, like how days went based upon, okay, when I woke up feeling this way, I had there was a consistent amount of behavior like that. Just kind of, just for somebody to start with, like a tangible thing to start with.
Yeah, I don't know why I didn't mention journaling. I have a whole journal I created. and so, like, but I like to talk about free things first, which is why your notebook, you could journal with a notebook, and actually my kids journal with a regular notebook from the dollar store. But this is something, when I used to go live, I would talk about these before this podcast, I used to go live on social media, and people would ask questions about mental health, and I would talk about journaling. And I realized sometimes people don't know what to say or what to write, and it doesn't have to be formatted. But this journal, I actually give people, I put a feelings chart in here, which is so important to me for people watching. And then I have examples of coping strategies you can use when you're having negative feelings. And then all of it is like free examples. And then every day I say, look at the feeling chart, identify how you're feeling, but then I ask a new question. And so this is it's on my website. This is a tool. There's many of journals, but again, if cost is an issue, you can just use paper. You can journal in your phone, right? Yeah. So I'm all about meeting people where they are. It's so important. What's the statement? Start where you are. Use what you can.
Yeah, use what you are with what you have. Yeah.
What you have. Yeah. So that's one thing that my mindset has always been that way with everything that I've done. And so, like, when you realize there's something that needs to happen, and you may not have the best tools or the tools that may be really easy to use, but you got some broken, let's say you really like, obviously a regular like pencil, a long pencil works better. But if this was cut and this is all I had, then I had to maneuver it a little bit until I can afford a bigger pencil. So I really want to encourage people to just kind of think outside the box. Don't get stuck in like what's not happening, but look at what you do have.
Yeah. And if you're of the person, so say let's even more limited awareness of, you just feel certain things, you can't pinpoint anything. What's the phrase? Triggers reveal what needs to be healed.
Yeah.
So if there's things, if you find yourself, if there's a button that can be pushed and you find it getting pushed regularly, that's telling you that something is going on. Like, the human brain is rooted to keep you safe.
Yeah.
So the human brain is not rooted in growth. It's not rooted in success. It's not rooted in love. It's rooted in protection. Like, it's designed to keep us safe. That's for the coexistence amongst each other and the continuation of the species. Like, it's all this, it's to keep us safe. So there's all these alerts and alarms that go off, in our brain when we're dealing with things. So kind of like if you're inside your home and you can hear the neighbor's car alarm going off, the alarm is letting you know that something is happening. So if in our life we have an alarm, something that is triggering us and making us feeling a certain way, if we have a tendency to, like with the neighbor's alarm, if you shut the windows and turn up the music, that is a coping mechanism to the alarm that you're hearing going off. If we have a series of coping mechanisms in place, if one of our internal alarms goes off, so we need to smoke something, one of our internal alarm goes off, so we need to drink, one of our internal alarms goes like, if so, you may not be able to identify what the alarm is telling you, but if you do realize that you're putting a bunch of things in place to deal with an alarm, that may be something to start looking at. So I may not even know what my root issue is, but I know
Right.
I get this feeling and I just need to drink. I need to smoke something. I need to
Mm-hmm.
decompress this. I need to do this and that. Okay, that's me reacting to some alarm that's going off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And alarms that's going off was going off years ago, and it not being addressed, it becomes scary and it becomes uncomfortable. So you adjust to it. Our even though the brain is supposed to keep us safe, it goes at the direction we tell it. And so if we're not addressing things, then the brain is like, okay, this is what we're afraid of. And we walk around feeling triggered a lot and not recognizing like what to do. But I love that. If you can't even like give it a name, let's pay attention to when it's happening. How does it happen? Who's around when it's happening?
Exactly.
And then begin to do inventory and that way. That's important. I love
Yeah.
that.
All these things that we're, like I said, all this stuff, accepting where we are, what we're doing, where we want to go. If the current path is or is not working for us, it actually be like, okay, I'm not where I want to be. This
Mm-hmm.
relationship dynamic is not the marriage I thought I signed up for.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't feel like I have friendships that are supportive and loving and empathetic and giving. Like I'm realizing that I'm pouring in to buckets with holes in it.
Mm-hmm.
Like sometimes, and that's hard. But then this is when once we've accepted it,
Mm-hmm.
now the responsibility is on us. The onus is on us to make some changes, but we can start that process,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and with that acceptance and then the proper preparation. Okay, well, let, let me readdress the way I communicate. Let me
Mm-hmm.
readdress the way I take in information. The brain only looks for the answers to the questions that we ask it. So
Yeah.
if we have a particular way of seeing things, the brain is only going to find things to substantiate what we already believe.
Mm-hmm.
So if we open ourselves up to other alternatives, the brain's going to find solutions going those directions as well. So we
Mm-hmm.
can find that maybe the way we've always done it, just the way I am, like if we open up to maybe there is another way to do it, we'll see other ways that still work for us. But that has to start with accepting that I'm not okay with, all these outcomes.
Mm.
But I am okay with making some changes to get a better outcome.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. And I think a lot of people are going to find hope in this message. When you say it's hard, it's grieving. When
Yeah.
you recognize what's been happening, sometimes it feels like you're grieving.
Yeah.
A lot of times we're attached to um like if you've been doing things a certain way and it's from protection,
Yeah.
and this is who you thought you were, and then it's like the change just it feels really hard. And so one of the things Jermaine and I is we're clear on when we're speaking is not to make it sound glossy and easy. It takes time, and every day, just take it one step at a time. People would think that you're never too old,
No.
because if you're still breathing, there's room for change. And I truly believe that to be true. So.
Yeah. And mental and emotional pain is a death. So when we're hurt by another person, when we're disappointed in an outcome, there was a belief that we had, an outcome that we thought was going to happen. There was a relationship in a specific way that we thought it was. Then we find out it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a death in that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a death in that dream and that belief in that expectation. It dies because
Mm-hmm.
we've now been shown that that's not true. So
Mm-hmm.
there's going to be a grieving and a mourning process to all these changes. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not going to be overnight, just like if we lost a friend. Some of us had a belief system our entire lives. So imagine being friends with somebody for 30 years and them
Mm-hmm.
being gone. You're
Mm-hmm.
not going to blink and all of a sudden you're past the
Right.
mourning process.
Right.
Or you could have been in love with somebody for a decade and then you find out something within the marriage. And so it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, what I thought the relationship was not true. So that part
Mm-hmm.
died. So there's a mourning for that belief and that attachment. But just like how we'll grieve for a while and we'll mourn and we'll always remember, we do still move on and move forward.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where it's not about shelling up for protection, that Let me try to keep myself safe from everything and avoid everything and not deal with anything. This is the preparation side. Okay, I need to make some more changes, be more communicative in this, be more still
Yeah.
go back out there. And once I get past this, whatever I believed before is no longer here, and I mourned it and I grieved it, I now know I can get on the other side of this. So this is not something that I have to avoid. It may not be pleasant, but I know I can deal with it.
Right,
So
right.
it doesn't have to be something that stops me or keeps me stagnant. It means, okay, I'm prepared now to deal with this situation should it happen again. So I can continue moving forward with new information and still continue to grow and evolve.
That's
And so
good.
staying prepared as a word, as opposed to say worrying about protecting ourselves, just accepting that these things do happen in life. And when we accept that, then we just prepare ourselves for them. And it's going to hurt at times, but we can still continue to move forward.
That's good. Thank you so much. This was a really great, informative conversation. I love informing people. I think that the more we know, it's not like, I think when we educate ourselves, not like the institutional education, but in general, like just educating ourselves about ourselves. And because so many people, myself included, didn't have the tools. Everything that I'm talking about as I talk today, or social media, or anytime, are things that I had to learn and I had to grieve. And and now, like, I just feel like I'm more in control, as opposed to before I didn't feel like I was in control. So and now I'm like, oh, this is how life can look like. And so I gotta tell these people.
Yeah.
And so that's why I continue to come on here every week, and Jermaine comes with me every month, because that's what we're feeling passionate about.
Yeah, the goal is when you get to the other side, it's not just for you. It's that you're supposed to come back and tell everybody else what's on the other side, and if they want to join you, to come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, tell people how they can reach you.
So once again, the website is mykeystome.com. Like I said, we referenced a lot of stuff in the assessment. It is, I find it as a great tool for everybody. Like my personal belief, I think that it's a great diagnostic to show wherever we are in whatever stage of life, how we operate, and language, not only for ourselves, but what we can articulate to another person. So if you go to mykeystome.com, you can get information on the assessment, any of the coaching stuff, I do all that. And then every social media platform is at J Morris CEO.
Well, thank you so much for this dope conversation.